Welcome again to a little Bible reflection. Over the last, let's say, few years, I've observed how the Gospel passages are full of natural wisdom and psychological insight. And this came back to me very strongly on the Sunday between Christmas Day and New Year's Day, when we celebrate the Feast of the Holy Family. Because the text that is chosen for that is when Jesus is found in the temple at the age of 12. And the story is beautiful because Joseph and Mary went up to Jerusalem to celebrate the feast of the Passover. And this year they took up their son, Jesus, who had recently achieved the age of 12 and therefore had become an adult in both the society and the religion of his time, with the due responsibilities and privileges of an adult male. And the story is that when they were up in Jerusalem, fulfilling their duties in the fiesta of the Passover, when they headed home, as they normally did, in a caravan for protection, security, and they did a whole day's journey. And the first night, Joseph and Mary looked for Jesus amongst the kids, as they normally did, and he wasn't there. So they had to turn around and go back to Jerusalem and search for him. And the text says they searched for 3 days. You can imagine the anxiety and the frustration and the fear that the parents would have felt. And finally they found him sitting in the temple with the doctors of the law, listening to them and asking them questions. And so Mary scolds the lad. She says to him, "Why did you do this to us? Did you not know that your father and I would be looking for you for 3 days?" And Jesus replies in a rather arrogant, self-satisfied and self-justifying way. He says, "Did you not know that I must be about my Father's affairs?" And they didn't understand him. But then Jesus did go back to Nazareth with them and was subject to them. And down there, under their tutelage, he grew in wisdom, in stature, and before God and his fellow neighbours. The beauty of this is Luke, the author, I think is trying to show us that Jesus at an early age was conscious of a special relationship with God. Because in his reply he even refers to Yahweh as Father, a rather unusual term in those times. But also the fact that Jesus had to grow up. He went back to Nazareth and was subject to Mary and Joseph. And he grew. He matured. He grew in wisdom, in stature, and before God and his neighbours. And so the beauty is the two elements in the family. First of all, we'll have Jesus. Jesus spends time with the doctors of the law because he wants to understand more what it might mean to be in a special relationship with God. And he's asking them questions. He's listening to them to learn. But also, Jesus did this of his own volition. He was still only 12 years old. Now legally, he had all the rights. But in fact, he was a member of a family. And he had not taken into account the situation of Joseph and Mary. And he had done what he wanted to do without taking into account the rest. Rather like so many recent graduates, whether it's from primary to secondary school, or whether it's from secondary to university or trade school, or whether it's graduating from there. So often the graduates are so totally full up with themselves. They don't take into account how their actions can affect others, especially their family. But then there again was Mary and Joseph. They were proud of their son who was now 12, but they hadn't made the jump that he possibly would no longer act as a child. And he didn't. And they presumed he'd be with the other kids as he normally did on the way back in the caravan. And he wasn't. He had done his own thing without consultation. And so they had to come back in fear and anxiety and search for him. And that's what we can have so often in a family. So much is invested in the kids graduating. And so often the parents don't realize that once they're graduated, they might think and feel differently. And the kids also so often don't think that when I act in this new way, it can have consequences for the life of others. So it's a very human and a very compact message for both parents and kids as they grow together and as they support one another. Okay? Just a final request, please. Columbans in the house here in Essendon, we're all on retreat at the moment with Bishop Tim Norton. He's the new Bishop of Broome, and he's accepted to give us a retreat. So please, a prayer for us during these days would be appreciated too. Okay? God bless you. See you next week.